get into this. Hi, everyone. You cannot see my face right now just because we're limited by how many cameras we have in this room. But thank you for joining us. My name is Alberto Villafan. I'm the digital producer at Sahan Journal. And today we are starting a new little series, Sahan Live. Thank you all so much for joining us. Today we're going to be partnering with the Advocates for Human Rights for this Instagram Live conversation. The non-governmental International Human Rights Organization is based in Minneapolis and serves the Upper Midwest. Today, I'm joined by two of their members of its refugee and immigration program. I'm going to let them introduce themselves. We already have one of them on camera. Hi, how are you doing today?
Hi, my name is Kim, they, them. I'm a supervising attorney for the Advocates for Human Rights, and I supervise our unaccompanied minor cases, so children that are here without their parents, and lead a team of attorneys serving that population, and also provide training and technical support to our pro bono partners who help us take those cases on.
Thank you so much for joining us today, Kim. Really appreciate having you here. And next, we're going to introduce our second expert today. Give me 1 second. There, see, we have a little transition so we can see your faces.
Great. My name is Hannah Sanderson, she, her. I direct the Refugee and Immigrant Program, and we work as a program with over 1,000 volunteer attorneys to represent people that are going through their immigration case because of a human rights violation or because they're likely to have a human rights violation happen to them if they return to their country of origin. So we work with asylum seekers, trafficking survivors, unaccompanied kids, like Kim was saying, and people that were evacuated from Afghanistan. So I lead a team of about 12 of us, and we work, like I said, with over 1,000 volunteer attorneys to represent people throughout the Upper Midwest, so Minnesota, North and South Dakota.
Thank you so much for joining us today, Hannah. I really appreciate you guys taking your time. It means a lot for us. Kim, we already got a report that you're a little hard to hear. Remember to hug and try to eat the microphone.
Will do.
So before we started this show, you guys were talking about how we've started hearing a lot of reports, or you guys have heard a lot of messages, comments about just a general anxiety coming from young people, older families, etc. What are some of the things that you guys have been hearing? Hannah, we already have the camera on you, so do you want to start?
I can start, yeah. You know, I think there is a lot of fear and uncertainty in the immigrant community and in communities in general, because immigrants are part of every community, and just kind of not knowing what to expect, hearing a lot of threats and, you know, negative rhetoric coming out of this administration about immigration and promises that were made to deport people and tear apart communities. So we are seeing a lot of fear, a lot of uncertainty, a lot of questions, certainly an uptick from a couple of months ago, but in my experience, even an uptick from the last Trump administration. And so one of the things we've spent a lot of time doing is making sure people know where to get good information so that they can make the best decisions for themselves and their families, and also do our best to combat this harmful and incorrect rhetoric coming out of this administration.
What are some of these examples of incorrect rhetoric that you've heard recently?
Well, I think basically the entire way that this administration paints the non-citizen population is wrong, and I think it's intended to instill fear and to, you know, create uncertainty in the non-citizen community. And so, you know, whether it's talking about, you know, equating non-citizens with criminals or something like that, that we just work really hard to combat that, you know, and make sure that we are saying the right things and speaking about the members of our community in a way that is accurate and honest, and that we are working to build communities that we're proud of and that we want to be a part of, and thinking forward about, like, what does that look like? Not looking, you know, in fear at kind of what's coming out of this administration, but really taking our communities and our futures in our hands and saying, like, who do we want to be and how do we make that happen, and how do we make our voice heard to make that happen?
So, Kim, you mentioned that you primarily work with families and kids. Is that correct?
Yeah, Yeah, we're also seeing that with our kids and family populations. A lot of children are reaching out and saying, hey, I am not only scared for myself, my own status, what is going to happen in those situations, but also what about my parents and my guardians? And most often we are referring them to create family preparedness plans. They can be found if you just do a quick Google search, just Family Preparedness ILRC has a great toolkit that can sort of help protect you in terms of being aware for what you need to do if a parent or guardian is detained.
So can you go into a little more detail on what exactly are some of the things that you recommend in a family preparedness plan? Is that what you called it, right?
Yeah. Well, one of the things is just collecting all of the important details that your family is going to need. And that's going to vary by family, right? Are you going to need medication lists? Are you going to need contacts updated at schools for younger children? What access are you going to give to this other guardian if there is going to be another guardian? And so the family preparedness plan will help someone run through sort of those critical questions that they're going to have.
Sorry, I'm also monitoring the chat and make sure that everyone's hearing us fine. We seem to be doing a little better with you, Kim. So what do you guys recommend that families have prepared ahead of time in case that they do run into ICE agents or, yeah.
Yeah, I think, so like Kim said, it really depends on the family, right? I think whether it's a family with young kids or an individual, I think the best thing that you can do is just be prepared. We hope for sure that you won't need any of these documents, that you won't have any interaction with ICE enforcement. But I think, and we don't want to spread any fear or suggest that everybody is at risk. But what we do recommend is that people are prepared. They kind of know what will happen in the event that the worst does happen. And so, like Kim said, it really depends. It depends on the family, but I think gathering, important documentation, making sure that you have a plan for your children, it, like I said, it depends on the person. But if you look at those family preparedness toolkits, they will kind of walk you through what are the different things to think about so that you're making sure that you've covered all your bases, depending on the situation of your particular family.
So it was, to my understanding, though, that Minneapolis is a sanctuary city, quote unquote, right? Shouldn't that mean that everyone here is safe?
I wish that were true. Unfortunately, that's not what a sanctuary city means. I think it's important to start out by saying that there is not one definition of what a sanctuary city is. Usually when people use that word to define a city, they're referring to some sort of separation between the law enforcement of that city and immigration enforcement. And that can mean a variety of different things. So, but one thing that it typically means is that that city or that locality has said they are not going to do ICE's job for them. So ICE is able to do their job, but local police, local law enforcement is not going to help or do the job of ICE for them. So that means that if you are in a sanctuary city or in a place that has declared itself to be a sanctuary or safe location, that doesn't mean that ICE cannot operate there. ICE is a federal law enforcement. They have the right to operate throughout the country, and cities and states can't stop them from doing that. So if you're in a sanctuary city, ICE can operate there, but local police will not be doing immigration enforcement on behalf of ICE.
So we have reported, Sahan Journal has reported in the past that Minneapolis police won't directly work alongside ICE agents, right? But we've still gotten reports that people are still scared to speak with law enforcement nonetheless. How can you guys dispel some of this anxiety? Like, is it safe to talk to police officers in Minneapolis, St. Paul?
That is one of the really dangerous effects of this rhetoric and the threats coming out of this administration. Even if these large-scale raids don't happen that have been threatened, even if they don't happen, there is a very real effect of causing fear in the communities, and that changes the way that people interact in their communities and the way that they live their lives in their communities. One of the things that's impacted is their comfort in reaching out to law enforcement, reporting crimes that happen to them, and kind of reaching out for help if they need it. And that is not good for our communities, right? We want people to be able to report if crimes happen to them, to reach out to law enforcement if they need help, and to have the safety to be able to do that. I think it's good to inform yourself on the position of your local law enforcement, and kind of what exactly their interaction is with immigration. But certainly in Minneapolis and St. Paul, they've said like trying to encourage people to report crimes against them, to reach out if they need help, and are trying to assure the community that that isn't going to have an immigration implication. They are not going to reach out to immigration if that happens.
Thank you for the answer, Hannah. Looks like we have one coming in from our chat. This one is, in addition to helping our friends and neighbors with preparedness, what guidance is there on, quote, bearing witness when we see ICE or law enforcement violating the rights of our neighbors?
So as I understand the question, they're asking about, some best practices, I suppose. If you kind of see ICE or the police doing some sort of enforcement action against your neighbor, I think that really depends on you and kind of how you want to get involved in the situation, what you're comfortable stepping in to do. And I don't want to advise any individual, especially someone I'm not able to talk to one-on-one, about what they should or should not do in that circumstance. But I do think it is always important to have a witness to these sort of arrest and enforcement actions, whether or not rights are being violated, whether or not something is happening that shouldn't be. I think having someone document what's going on and being able to be a witness, should that be necessary down the road, is really important. So being able to stand up and be a presence there, and also know kind of who is there, like who is doing that enforcement, knowing whether it's ICE, whether it's the police, where they're taking somebody. Because one challenge, if someone is being arrested by ICE, for example, is that people don't always know where they go, and it's hard to know, especially in the first couple of days, where someone has been taken. And so being able to ask those questions and understand where someone went, and can answer those questions as well for family who may not be there to see it.
So on the topic of, protecting yourself and staying safe, what do people still have, like, some protections even if they don't have an immigration status? What protections do they have, if any at all?
Yeah, people still have the right to remain silent. They still have the right to medical care if there is some kind of emergency. And we do want people to know their rights so that they're able to protect themselves as needed. We are recommending folks watch our Know Your Rights video on social media, and it has a lot of those broken down. It takes about 5 minutes. But we are recommending folks carry the Know Your Rights red cards. If you Google that, you should be able to carry that in your wallet. Making sure you understand the differences in legal administrative warrants. If there is a police officer or ICE coming to your house, knowing that you have the right to consult with an attorney and read the documents that are given to you.
I'm sorry, can we backtrack for just a second? You said an administrative warrant. Can you define what that means?
Yeah. So there is a difference between a police warrant that is signed by a judge or a magistrate. It has to be articulate. It has to have your name, the address, the thing or location that is going to be searched, and that gives a police officer the authority to enter the place that is written on the warrant. ICE uses administrative warrants. That means it's a document that says warrant at the very top, but it is signed by an ICE official of some kind. And so it doesn't give ICE the legal authority to enter your house, to conduct a search in your premises. So we do recommend folks use those red cards so that they are aware that they have the right to say, no, I don't want to answer questions, no, I don't want to be searched, all of that.
So what can an ICE officer do with an administrative warrant? What are they allowed to do with that?
When you open the door, like let's say they're coming into your home, they are allowed to essentially enter. If you are opening your door, they usually take that authority. A lot of the time, ICE is allowed to lie to the public, right? They can drive around in unmarked cars. They can say they're looking for someone, they're found a lost wallet or something like that. So there are different ways to get access and entry to people. And once that access and entry is granted, it is really difficult to get out of. So it would be possible for someone to knock on your door, you let them in, they're saying they're looking for a neighbor or something like that, and then you end up detained and in custody.
So a rule of thumb would just be not to open your door? Am I understanding that correctly?
Right, yeah. So if ICE is coming to your door, don't open it, ask who it is, and ask to see that warrant and make sure that you are seeing that it is signed by a judicial officer and that it has your name and address on that paper. Otherwise, they don't have authority to really be bothering you.
Going back a little bit, we have a question from our chat again. What site is the Know Your Rights video on that you mentioned?
It's on our, so for the Advocates for Human Rights, it's on our social media accounts. It's also on our YouTube channel. So if you're not on social media, you can go to YouTube and see our Know Your Rights video, both in English and in Spanish. And it has, Kim actually put this together. It's very beautiful. But it has pictures of the two different types of warrants. So you can get a sense of what those look like and what to look for. And the main thing is looking at who signed it, and if it's signed by a judge, then that does give the official the power to search and to arrest and all of that. And if it's signed by an immigration officer or someone that works for ICE, it does not, right? So back to your question a little while ago, I think as a general statement, it's important to remind people that the Constitution applies to everybody. The Constitution has not been suspended. We still have the Constitution, and the most important thing is that people know what rights they have under the Constitution, understand those rights, and feel empowered to act on them. And that one of the things that the effects of these kind of threats and these scare tactics is people either, kind of aren't comfortable exercising their rights or don't know them and they're afraid and they don't stand up and kind of say like, nope, I don't consent to that. I have the right to remain silent. So we want to make sure people know to do that, know they have the right to do that, and feel empowered to do that. And the red cards Kim was mentioning have like a script on them. So if you are uncomfortable kind of speaking these things out loud, you can hand them to the officer, and they basically declare your rights to remain silent, right to not be searched, all of that. You can slip it under the door if you don't want to open the door, which we recommend. But then you don't have to kind of know or have a script that you feel comfortable kind of saying out loud.
So what is the Advocates for Human Rights? What are you guys doing to get this information to people who maybe don't know about your organization, don't have access to the internet? How are you reaching people?
Well, here we are. This is one of the ways, but that video as well is one of the ways that we're trying to make sure as many people know about their rights and are seeing that in an accessible way. Trying to get out into the community, talking to all of our clients. We're telling them, make sure you're getting information from good places, make sure you're watching these things, make sure you're preparing in this way, and just trying to reach people in as many ways as possible about what's true and what their rights are. We can't dispel every rumor, right? That's a game of whack-a-mole that we'll just all tire ourselves out playing, but wanting to make sure that we're getting good and true information out there so people know how to sift through the garbage and also know how to exercise their own rights and be confident in in themselves if they do have an interaction with ICE.
So, like you said, we obviously can't debunk every single rumor we
Right.
see. That's a non-winning game.
Yes.
But have you guys seen like common ones? Something that you see people constantly misunderstanding, not understanding, or just not knowing?
Yeah, I'm sure Kim does as well. I can say a few. I think there's certainly been reports of raids that have been on social media, or people have reached out to us. And raids meaning large-scale ICE enforcement activity. So ICE is conducting enforcement activity, but we haven't seen any like large-scale workplace raids or anything like that. In Minnesota, correct. There's been misunderstandings of if police is somewhere looking for somebody, that someone reports that it's ICE, that kind of thing. And then there's just misunderstandings about what rights people have or what the status of their immigration case is now under this administration. So people asking questions about like, can I still seek asylum, or what? Like, I have asylum, am I allowed to stay? So misunderstandings and questions about their legal status because there's been so much kind of attack against people in different legal statuses, or kind of in the process of seeking legal status.
So on the topic of all of these orders and the immigration courts, with all the orders that we've seen from Trump to deport millions of people, how do we expect the immigration court system to actually handle it? To my understanding, it's already a little flooded. Is that not true?
A little flooded. I like that term. Yeah, I think there's a lot of problems with the threat to deport millions of people. There's moral and ethical problems with that, certainly, but there's also logistical problems, financial problems, right? Like there's a lot that goes into, arresting individuals, and, they have the right to go through their immigration court proceedings if they're being deported in most circumstances. And so you're right, the court has a large backlog in Minnesota. It's tens of thousands of cases that are waiting to be heard, and so there's a large backlog, and this is going to make it quite a bit larger. And there has been no promise of increased funding or support for the systems of adjudication that really help determine whether someone has an argument under the law to stay in the United States or not. So the asylum office that adjudicates asylum claims, and also, does screenings at the border for people that are seeking asylum there, and the immigration courts that are adjudicating these removal hearings. We don't have any promises of more funding or more support for those parts of the government that can kind of help ensure due process is met.
So it's fine if you guys don't have a good answer to this. This is a vague question, but how long does it typically take to in immigration court? Like, how long are you just waiting in limbo, I guess? Does that make sense?
Yeah. It depends. That's the classic lawyer answer for everything. It depends on what type of relief you're seeking. So in court, basically the Department of Homeland Security is, levels charges against you that you don't have the right to either be here or stay here. And then you have that opportunity to raise a defense to that. You can either say, nope, that's wrong, I actually do. Or you can say, like, okay, I don't have a visa, I don't have permission, but I would like to put forward an asylum claim because I'm afraid to return to my country of origin. I can't do that. So it depends on whether or not you have a defense, what that defense is, if you have an attorney that's able to help you prepare, how long it took you to find an attorney, and then kind of where you ended up. Like, the court is trying to manage a lot of different cases, and some of them are moving on a faster clip, and some of them have been waiting more than 5 years for hearings. And so it really depends on kind of a lot of different factors, but it could be anywhere from, a couple of months if you're not raising any claim to relief, to like nearly a decade, probably, if you're not lucky. And
A decade?
It can be.
Okay. That's so. Do you expect like immigration courts to take longer with the new orders to deport significantly more people?
I mean, yes.
Yeah.
There's going
Obvious
to
answer.
be a larger population seeking some sort of process to apply for a protection, or that just needs to get through the system in its entirety. And the court or the Department of Homeland Security is also expanding what we call expedited removal, which is a process that accelerates the rate at which you're going through your immigration case and immigration proceedings.
Okay, thank you. We have another question from the chat right now. Where can people find bilingual resources? Not just English and Spanish, though. There are people who speak Somali, French, etc.
Lots of languages. Yeah. So there's a great website that we have here in Minnesota called, the address is lawhelpmn.org. And that is a place where you can search for an attorney or an office that might be able to help you with a case. It also has a self-help library. We have one on our website as well, but the one on Law Help MN is broader. So there's immigration, there's non-immigration, there's many different types of immigration cases and information, and it's translated into a lot of different languages. I don't think it's consistent across every single document, but I know that a lot of the documents that we have helped work on in the past couple of years to provide kind of expertise on those resources have been Spanish, Somali, Hmong, Oromo, Karen, French, Haitian Creole. So there's a lot of different languages that it's translated into, and English as well. So I recommend that. And then we have our self-help library as well, and other organizations postings to their websites as well.
I'm going to pivot a little bit. So we've recently seen the passage of the Laken-Riley Act and have heard a lot from the administration, the Trump administration, about expanding actions targeting people with criminal histories. Are there any things people can do to help protect themselves in that regard?
You want to go?
Yeah, I can go. I think one thing that is really terrifying about the Laken-Riley Act is that it really does affect people even without criminal charges or sentences. So it's harming people that are just arrested sometimes for something as simple as a theft from a store. So crimes of survival can be criminalized, and that is an expansion that is brought by the act. Could you repeat your question?
Are there any things that people can do to protect themselves?
Yeah. I think, knowing your rights is definitely going to be important to that. Generally, if you can avoid it, avoiding things that are going to get you in trouble, theft, larceny, assault on a police officer, things like that, things that are targeted by the act itself is going to be really important. Hannah, what would you add anything there?
Yeah, I think, just understanding what the act says. So like Kim said, you don't need a conviction necessarily to fall under this act. And so, we have this idea in our criminal legal system that you're innocent until proven guilty, and you have the ability to put on your case and show if you did not commit that crime, prove that you did not, right? This act basically circumvents that process and can take someone into immigration custody because they have this criminal charge, whether or not it's true, take them into immigration custody, and then they are not allowed to be released. So this mandatory detention is not mandatory arrest. It is mandatory you have to stay in detention the whole time you're going through your case. So they do not have the opportunity to leave and then put on their defense or show that they're actually innocent of those crimes. They are forced to remain in immigration detention the whole time. So it's not good. It is not good. It is not making communities safer. It is not just, there is no age limit. So if people are kids that are arrested for shoplifting, that counts as well. So
Children could be detained.
correct.
Children. Okay.
Yeah. It depends on the so in Minnesota our facilities are 18 and older, but there are other they don't have to stay here. So yeah, I think it's just making sure you understand what that is, just being really, really careful, and preparing in the event, like the family preparedness, right? In the event that you are arrested or picked up, that you have a plan for yourself and your family.
On the topic of plans, what questions should people be bringing when they do meet with their attorneys regarding their legal status?
Yeah. So we definitely recommend that people meet with a lawyer and get a consultation. There's so many different areas of immigration law. There's so many different types of pathways that might be available to somebody, and it's good to have a broad consultation about what might be available to you, and it might not be something that's on your radar. So just going with any immigration documentation that you have, and then answering all the questions that the lawyer has for you. They have a good way of going through their intake process and understanding kind of what might be available to you, and then they can give you a good sense about what your options are.
What are some common questions that you would ask some of your clients?
So we work specifically with people in the humanitarian immigration space, right? So we're asking about whether they're afraid to go back to their country, why they're afraid, what about them, makes it dangerous for them to return, what's kind of their specific story, right? Different questions, obviously, if they're kids or trafficking survivors, different lines of questions there. But if you're getting a consult from a private attorney, for example, they will ask a lot of questions about the family history, if they have family that's U.S. citizens, kind of that individual's history of entry with a visa or not a visa, any crime that's been committed against that person in the past. So there's a kind of a broad buffet of questions, I will say. And I do want to plug that on our website, we have a Become a Client page. That's a good way to get into our intake, but there's also a list in Spanish and English of nonprofits and private attorneys that are immigration attorneys in the area. So you can download that, and it lists what types of cases they take and also what languages they speak in their offices, so you can find attorneys that you might want to talk to.
I'm just going to remind everyone tuning into this broadcast that as soon as we're done with this show, we're going to be able to link all of these resources onto our website. There's an article already on our homepage that should give you some clarification on what we're talking about as well. In case you do need a list or a connection to all these links that we're dropping and mentioning, we'll have those for you later, okay? Kim, what would you recommend for your clients? What do you think they need to prepare?
Yeah, I like to stick to the basics. Do you know your status? If you are going to be talking to ICE or something, do you know if you have a green card? Do you know if you have won asylum? Do you know what is going on in your immigration case? A lot of that is also to calm people's nerves, right? If you have an asylum claim that is pending, you are in a better position to fight to stay here in the United States to fight your case, whereas you don't have something filed and pending. So what kind of documents is that child or that individual going to be carrying? Do they have something like a work permit card that is going to be proof of identity and proof that they have an application pending, or that they have a form of relief approved?
So we've seen temporary protective status also come under attack in recent weeks. Can we define what TPS, temporary protective status, means and how that's different from asylum?
Yeah, so asylum is fear of return to your home country based on either past persecution or future persecution. It has to be connected in some way to your race, your religion, your ethnicity, your nationality, or something we call a particular social group. And that is very amorphous and is seldom defined, but essentially that you are a group that is seen within a community. So an LGBT group, a women facing domestic violence in a situation where she can't leave, things like that. Temporary protected status is not a status that lasts forever, right? So if you win asylum, you win protection from being returned to your home country, and that status will eventually lead to legal permanent residence, and it could lead to citizenship, but temporary protected status doesn't have that. It is something that we have defined as a country that has something happen, either like a war or a natural disaster, and we designate that country and say, like, because of this thing, we're not going to send you back right now. Once that country is not designated, then the U.S. will have the opportunity to try to begin removing people if they're not part of a designated country that has TPS. So
then, what resources should people be going to if they have more questions about their TPS changes?
Yeah. So again, I'm going to recommend people speak to a lawyer. Both to understand where they're at in their TPS process and whether or not it's expiring, and then also what, like Kim said, and the name TPS suggests, it's a temporary status, and so it's really important to understand if there's some sort of way that you can stay here permanently. Is there a pathway for you to remain here and to get permanent legal status? And so to talk to an attorney to understand what those might be and get yourself in that process as soon as you can. I think the more permanent your legal status, the safer you are. But in the meantime, and I think you've kind of asked this question, and I haven't said this before, so I just want to make sure that I say it now. Just making sure you have copies of documents showing what your legal status is, whether that's a copy of your green card, a copy of an approval notice, or a receipt showing you filed asylum, and bring that with you so that in the event that you do have an interaction with ICE, that you have proof of where you're at in the process. And that if you are arrested by ICE and you are afraid to go back to your country of origin, that you say that. It's really important that you say that you say it often, and that you tell them, I'm afraid to go back. Please do not, I want to claim asylum. I'm afraid to go back. Say that as often as you can so that you have the right to go into that process.
So we have another question from the chat today. Tripping over my words. Are there legal resources for H-2A workers who may be threatened with ICE-related retaliations by their employees?
By their
employer.
employers?
I have dyslexia. I never learned how to read. I'm sorry.
I don't actually know the answer to that. So we don't do a lot of work with employment-based visas. But I will say that threatening someone's immigration status, an employer threatening someone's immigration status, is a red flag to me for labor violations and human trafficking. So I think it's important to understand that just because someone has a visa does not mean that they're not in a situation of trafficking, and does not mean they're not being exploited. And the state of Minnesota has a really strong network for labor exploitation and human trafficking, and that's something that our organization does as well. So understanding kind of labor trafficking, some of the red flags for that, and reaching out to a community organization or us, someone you trust, a pastor, someone that can reach out. Sometimes it's not safe for the employee to reach out directly to a legal service organization, or they're not able to do that. But if they can get word out to, like I said, a pastor or someone in a medical facility that they go to, and kind of ask them for resources, that's what we recommend, and certainly can reach out to us as well.
Thank you very much. So we have another question from the chat, and this one is one that I actually would really like to know. So do either of you two recommend getting double citizenship for kids born here but with parents from other countries?
So if they would get a citizenship from somewhere else?
Yeah. So, for example, like I have direct lineage. I will not disclose my family's immigration status. But,
well done. Don't recommend.
You don't need to know that. But I do have family that reside and are from Mexico, you know, and I'm, to my knowledge, I am now able to also apply for citizenship there, since I have a direct lineage to it.
Yeah.
You know, do you recommend getting a dual citizenship?
So, yeah, Kim might have a different answer to this. I think I'm not worried about people that are citizens of the United States, but I think that's certainly a personal choice you can make and gives you options if you are, you know, able to get citizenship somewhere outside of the U.S. And able to hold that dual nationality. I think that gives you, that gives you options. So it's worth looking into for sure. It's probably a personal decision, but you know, I understand that Trump, in one of his executive orders, attempted to end birthright citizenship. Just to be clear, he's not able to do that. That is not something he can do through executive order. It is part of our Constitution, and it has been stopped by the courts. So if you are a U.S. citizen, you are a U.S. citizen. But you can, yes.
Kim?
Yeah, I think my answer is going to be dependent on the family and the age of the children, right? So what are the statuses of the parents? How old are the children that you're going to be applying for that passport or citizenship for? And what does the family preparedness plan look like in the end? Is there a plan for the minor children to stay here with another relative or another close family member, or are you getting that citizenship paperwork done because you want that child to be able to leave with you if you are removed? So I do think that it will take maybe talking to an immigration attorney to sort of suss that out if that is the best thing for you and your family. But yeah, I just would want to know more about those factors before I gave any sort of advice.
Simply identifying your own personal situation, basically. Yeah?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay. Oh, shoot. So you, Hannah, you mentioned that Trump has tried to remove birthright citizenship. And I know from my own family, from people that I've spoken with, that they were legitimately concerned that that was a possibility. It's not, right?
It's not. And I think the concern that your family feels, that's the point. Like, that's what he's trying to do. And I'm not blaming them. I understand the concern, but he is trying to stoke that fear and uncertainty in communities. And that is what he's trying to do. There is no, birthright citizenship has not ended. Again, it's part of our Constitution. He can't just sign in Sharpie and make that go away. So no, that their birthright citizenship is still part of our Constitution. The judge that this case went in front of, when organizations basically immediately sued on this issue, was basically scoffed at the government's position. He's like, I don't understand how you can possibly put this forward as an actual legal argument. So it is not a good case. Birthright citizenship is not over. But I also hear the fear and the uncertainty, and that is kind of what this administration is trying. One of the things they're trying to do in these orders is to create that fear and uncertainty in those communities.
What's the benefit of instigating this type of fear?
Well, there's a lot of possible benefits. I don't have a desire to go into the Trump administration's mind and understand exactly why they're choosing the things they're choosing, for sure. But I think that political parties can benefit from fear and uncertainty. Fear is a very strong driver, and that's, I think, instilling fear in American citizens about immigrants as well has been a strong driver for this party and at this time. And so, I don't know what their end game is here, but I know that, that creating that fear and uncertainty in those communities and in some way making people that were afraid of immigration feeling more secure, unfortunately, I think is also part of it.
Thank you. So we're reaching the end of our broadcast today. And so I'm going to hit you guys both with just 2 more questions, all right? And if anyone in the audience has anything else they would like to ask, now is your chance.
Speak now.
Speak now or forever hold your peace. So before we log off, where can people find more info about their basic rights and preparedness planning?
Kim's KYR.
Yeah. Follow us on social media. We have that Know Your Rights presentation linked on our social media platforms. But there are definitely lots of agencies putting out Know Your Rights and lots of local organizations that are putting together rapid response networks. So I know that Gopal, Minnesota, or Unidos is putting on a line for reporting ICE and stuff. So there are lots of places where you can get good advice.
Mm-hmm.
Anna, any recommendations from you?
Yeah, I think it's always good to know where you're getting your information. So from our organization, the ACLU also puts out some good information on knowing kind of the difference between what police can do versus what ICE can do. I think that's a really useful resource. Immigrant Law Center did a Facebook Live a couple of weeks ago. At his time, I think a couple of weeks ago, but it's recorded and saved on their Facebook as well, that you can ask questions after the fact as well. So we are all working together to put those out and to make sure people understand, what their rights are.
Yeah.
Thank you both. Did you have something you wanted to add?
Oh, well, I just think the only thing that I wanted to add is a lot of this is destabilizing and really isolated for a lot of the folks that may be watching. And so, knowing your rights is one way to make sure that you can stay involved and stay connected to your community. To hope.
Yeah.
We've got two more questions before I ask my last one. All right. First up is an immigrant protected from deportation if they can show paperwork that they have started the process to get asylum?
So that depends.
Yeah.
Depends.
And the process, but for the most part, I think what I'll say generally is that asylum, people have a right to seek asylum and have their asylum case heard. There's a lot of intricacies about how that goes and when and all of that. But I will say, if you are already in court and have filed an asylum application, then that is a demonstration. So when you file, right, that isn't a legal status that you get. You're not in a legal immigration status, but you do have permission to stay here, excuse me, while that case is being adjudicated. So it shows the immigration official, like, I have permission to be here. I'm going through this process. So it's something less than kind of being fully undocumented. So that's kind of why we suggest you show that, so you can kind of show that that you're going through the process. You have the right to stay here. What the next steps look like and how that's going to go are going to depend on a lot of different things. But I do think it's a helpful thing to show immigration. Mm-hmm. I know that wasn't very straightforward, but
this is not a straightforward time we're living
no,
in.
It is not.
We've got one more, which I think we actually touched on, but it's still worth going back to. For folks who hear/see a lot of disinformation designed to denigrate our community, our immigrant communities, this is a chat question, by the way. What are a few common myths on rights of immigrants that you can dispel? I think we had you answer last time. Kim, do you want to take a whack at it?
Ooh. I think what Hannah was talking about before, just the language that we use around this is really important. A lot of the language that criminalizes immigration is important, but also just this language of there being some sort of invasion of migrants, of people, of folks entering through the southern border. It really is no invasion, and has also the connotation that people are coming or invading and bringing with them all of the undesirables, disease, crime, violence, all of that stuff. And that is not something that we see in our communities and see with our neighbors. Immigrants contribute to the economy. They contribute to our communities. And so just that rhetoric is something that I wish just went away, was dispelled.
Did you have something that you wanted to add, Hannah?
Sure. I mean, I kind of jumping off what Kim was saying, I think there's a lot of misinformation is one. I think there's been a lot of lies about the immigrant community and kind of how they show up in the community and kind of the benefits that they bring. I think I have a little bit of discomfort in talking about this because I don't like to talk about people as being like a benefit or not a benefit, or try to say some people are worth being here because they, buy stuff, or, like, I think that's not how any of us want to talk about it. But I do think it's worth saying that when they talk about immigrants, like being a drain on the economy or being really expensive or all this, that is just like factually incorrect. And immigrants, undocumented immigrants, pay millions and millions of dollars into our Social Security and Medicaid systems and Medicare systems, and aren't not eligible to withdraw from that. So they are an important part of our economy. Immigrants generally are an important part of our economy. That to me is not like the most important argument as to their worth as human beings, but I do think it's worth saying that's just a lie. And if you are seeing that, right, if you're seeing someone saying that, or if you're seeing, you're reading an article or seeing a post about that, you might want to think twice about the other things that are being said by that person or from that source. And it's a good way to kind of test whether or not that's someone or something you want to listen to.
People are simply people, whether or not they're giving a benefit to you.
Correct.
Right. All right. My last question for you guys, before we sign off. What services do advocates for human rights, you guys are both advocates for human rights.
Yes.
What services do you guys provide?
In the Refugee and Immigrant Program, we provide direct legal services in immigration proceedings to asylum seekers, trafficking survivors, and unaccompanied minors, along with, like I said, our over 1,000 volunteer attorneys. So for the most part, we're working with clients, understanding their claims, and then pairing them with a volunteer, and have a really strong network of volunteer attorneys, most of them here in the Twin Cities, but also across the country, and in representing clients in their immigration cases. But yeah, that's mostly what we do.
Yeah, if you're an attorney and want to take on a pro bono case, definitely reach out.
Give us a call. And we have a lot of volunteers that have no immigration experience when they start with us, and we are willing to work with everybody. So,
Thank you guys so much for joining us today. Once again, this is Kim and Hannah from Advocates for Human Rights. Thank you all so much for joining us this afternoon. Thank you to Hannah and Kim for taking time to speak with all of us and answering all of your questions. We really hope this was beneficial to everyone. I know I feel a little more informed, at least 5% more informed.
oh, good. That's a good percent.
At least 5.
Yeah, that's more than 4.
That's more than 4. Before I sign off, I want to remind everyone, please do not miss our upcoming community conversation with NPR News next Thursday at February 20th at 6 p.m. in St. Paul. You'll hear immigrant stories and explore what preserving cultures look like for immigrants and refugees in Minnesota today. You can learn more using the link in our bio and perusing the rest of our website. We'll have more information online very